there are bound to be people in high school who constantly and persistently never fail. When they enter a classroom, when they enter a test, when they engage in new concept, they're not possibly going to fail. Everything is going to come flawlessly to them. But then, they're the rest of us. We're going to face challenges, we're going to face any particular concept that we'll never understand. The deficit and whether or not we come over and we overcome this challenge is a tale of our own, and it's what's going to be shown on our transcript, unfortunately. And as facing the result of this, and as unfortunate as it may be when it comes to when assessments come before the learning instead of the learning coming before the assessments, it's a tale of its own, and it's not necessarily a problem, but really a learning experience of which should be understood. We all will soon encounter failure, whether or not we engage in high school, in college, in career, any sort. There's some source of optimism to come with every experience possible. Relating a lot to my background, investing in finance, there's a winner and then there's a loser to every side of the trade. In terms of owning a stock or anything like that, when you invest in a company like Google or any of the titans and Intel in the Silicon Valley, it seems like when you make an investment, you're looking towards, you're betting that the stock or the equity is going to be rising in value, of course. Then there are other sub-worlds of investing called the futures and the commodities market, where you are betting against another person who you'll never meet, who you'll never understand their motive for. But there will be two opposing sides of a bet. At the end of an expiration date, one of you has already decided that this stock is going to reach this price, and this stock is going to go below this price. Combined together, what you're leveraging and what you're betting against is equal to zero. You're betting against someone else's failure in investing. The same principle applies in accounting, when every time you make a transaction and every time you make a transaction in your balance sheet, there's going to be a plus, like money incurred, and there's going to be a minus when that money leaves. It's deposited into the bank account, or it's employed, and it's used to employ your staff. In my world, in connecting with education, it was a very valuable lesson to encounter my first personal failure in a class. I may be 17 years old, and I have plenty of schooling left ahead of me. There's one class in particular that led to me to wonder what exactly failure is going to mean. In the classical definition of failure, it seems like failure is exactly one instance when you've messed up. You've gotten a test, and it's an F or a D, but rather here it's going to be a C, a B, or even in extreme cases an A minus. The problem is that failure cannot be one singular occurrence. And unfortunately, that was my motive when I first joined computer science my sophomore year. Computer science did not go well, and then I can say that, and that's overall a very valuable learning lesson. But there are of course faults of my own that came with that class. The input of time was not there. And the best optimization of time, it feels like students, as well as current students, future students, and past students are going to realize that procrastination seems like the best optimization of your time. Where you're going to chunk out 4 hours the night before, and you're going to grind it out, and you're going to understand all of the concept and everything that's going to be tested. It seems like the best optimization of time instead of starting 3 days earlier and learning the recursive series before you have a test in 3 days. You can't blame anyone for optimizing their time and spending time on exactly what they love. But it's an understanding that you must pay your dues before you can enjoy, before you can have fun, and before you can master and apply your learning. With computer science, I learned it because it was from a STEM background. It was something my brother hadn't done, and it was something that my dad had emphasized. Every single book that's above my bookshelf and continues to haunt me today is a computer science book. Only when I started chucking things out and I started putting my own finance metric books, anything like that, is when I started seeing exactly what I wanted to see. In the end, the results were not there. In my own definition, I royally screwed up. There's nothing that I could show for it except for the transcript. We all want to effortlessly achieve in a class. We all want to be prodigies. We all want to be genii. who just understand every concept, who are going to master it and do whatever it takes, fudge our way through, and get the grade we exactly want. It's an understanding from my trig pre-calc teacher, Mr. Yin. Learning is supposed to come before the grade, and more often with students, it's not. And in the best optimization of our time, you're betting against time. You're betting that, okay, I'm going to learn and master this concept in 4 hours the night before. Learning is going to come before the grade if you put the time well before the grade. Time usage is optimal as you grow older. You want to specialize, you want to spend time doing what you love, and you want to become the best at it, of course. But there's another metric to understanding how much time needs to be invested first. It's a risk assessment. Outside of the classroom, there are plenty of experiences in which I failed to understand risk assessment. In computer science, it didn't seem like a very big failure. After 6 weeks, I was locked into the class. And for the first 6 weeks, everything was going smoothly, of course. But with risk assessment, you have to evaluate the overall failures, the worst possible scenario, and then the best possible scenario. And in every student's mind, especially how we grow up here, you're always going to imagine the best case scenario and not necessarily the worst case scenario. Why? Because it's pessimistic thinking, and you want to be an optimist, of course. Because optimists and future leaders, any of the speakers here before, are going to lead their sense, and they're going to wake up with a purpose of optimism. And it seems like there are always going to be winners and losers with investing and with finance or with education. Except it's the understanding that winners are going to spend time how they like, of course. But losers are not going to be losers by the classical definition that they failed once or anything like that, or they're not doing well in their education. Losers are the only people who don't live up to their potential. The potential being that they're grinding it out. They're doing every possible thing they can do to achieve success and to be the best. What a transcript is going to show is they're going to show the winners. And that's not really much we can do about it. But they're not going to be able to show the potential. They're going to show maybe the instance of one classical definition of failure, like I mentioned before, where in one instance, in one semester, this is the grade you got. Whereas what should be a better definition of failure is that the consistency and the improvement that you are going to make should be success. In my own example, and outside of the classroom, I joined the JV football team. I was undersized for my age. I was the only kid on the team who wore glasses, and it was a sport I loved. It was a sport I watched, but somehow along the way, it seemed that there's a difference between watching the sport, and then there's a difference between loving it and playing it. It's just somewhere along the way, I was pushed to do football, and I looked and I evaluated the risk assessment. I said, look, the best possible scenario is that I'm going to walk it down on a homecoming game across the field and be honored with my parents. I'm going to finally have my last name on the back of a jersey for each of my family members, and I'm going to do something that my brother couldn't do. He wanted to play football. For whatever reason, he just didn't play football. He was definitely much bigger size than me, but I'm taller now, so it's okay. But in the progress of football, one day while weightlifting, I incorrectly racked a weight while I was doing a back squat. Whatever the weight was, it was heavy enough to hear a pop from my spinal cord. There's nothing I could do about it. It was a risk assessment where when I signed those forms back in May and I started camp, I never would have imagined that I would have severe back troubles, that I would be going to rehab, and I would still be feeling the pain today. I woke up today with the same exact pain that of course to a lesser degree, of that exact same moment when I felt that pop in my back. And I required rehab for the entire season for 4 hours a day. It's all love to the football department. I was absolutely treated as a teammate, as a respectable sophomore who had some role model or had some lessons to give the freshmen. It was my first and my rookie year, but I couldn't live it up to what I understood. My risk assessment was that I could be an honor to my family, to my brother, to the school by joining the football team and getting out my dreams and wearing number 10 and everything like that. It was the risk assessment, and it was the understanding that I didn't understand the worst case scenario, where I would be near paralysis, where rehab was required for 4 hours a day, and it's going to reflect poorly in school, and it was the worst possible outcome that I could imagine. It truly was my biggest failure yet. This was, of course, concurring with computer science, but after done with football, I was left with computer science. I was done with rehab. Everything was all good. The problem was that after 6 weeks, I was still locked in to computer science. And what reflected on me with football was that this was one singular instance, one singular season, and it seemed to be, by its classical definition of failure, one instance of failure where I messed up. I couldn't do anything about it. It was 3 months of being sidelined, and I couldn't return to that. By that instance, by the proper definition of failure, like a test or a grade or anything like that, there's one singular instance where I had messed up, and there's nothing else I could do except move forward. It was locked in. It was a done deal. But now I'd moved on to computer science, and with computer science, there were more troubles, of course, where it was an extended period, and there was of course another end date. It was December, and I had finals and everything like that. It seemed like the failures and the concurred costs, along with computer science, was destroyed confidence, poor test-taking abilities, not just in computer science, but in all my other classes, and the little credibility to fight with my parents. I had no backing. I had no reason to leave the house. I had no reason to ask for privileges or anything like that, because I was not living up to their standards. But if anything, I was living up to my own potential, and that I gave it my all. I did the best risk assessment I could possibly do, and I was possibly the best I could be in that class. Whether or not the learning, of course, didn't necessarily come at the timely manner I needed it to, and I didn't procrastinate. I can at least claim that, but it was a singular instance where I couldn't do anything about it. It was one semester locked in. Everything was done. I had winter break to reflect over it, and I really wondered. For the first time, I didn't know what my future was going to be like. It was the pain of not understanding what my future was going to entail. It's important to take it in smaller rations and to understand that computer science is not going to be my career, and it's not going to be my class. But when I take U.S. history or any other or calculus or any example, that it's going to be that I'm going to shine in those areas, and I'm going to continue to remember what I did wrong in computer science. And it turns out that the learning for computer science actually did come after a while. And the summer after the course where I scraped my way through computer science, I got a ridiculous offer where I had to create a financial model using several computer science languages that I didn't understand for the life of me, to model and simulate the stock market. It's exactly what my interest in finance and economics related to, of course, and it was great. But then it paired me with what I disliked the most. And the learning, of course, had come after a while. It had come once June had hit. And it was finally great to understand that the 90% failure and the 10% success that I had, coming out of rehab and in the middle of my first semester of sophomore year, was starting to tip its weight, and it's starting to tip its scale towards the success side, where success is slowly going to start getting heavier and heavier. And as every day of that work experience went by, and as every language was starting to become more understood, and test runs of the financial model were all working well, it finally came that almost after a semester's worth of work experience, approximately for 3-4 months, I had achieved the financial model I wanted to do. And I can't put that on the transcript, of course, but while there may be negative singular influences or negative singular experiences of yours, there are also going to be positive ones. And that's going to help you tip the scale towards you. It's going to make you a smarter investor. It's going to make you a smarter student, taking it all in perspective. And I'm glad I took computer science, where learning, of course, came first, and it's fantastic that it did. But it's better than me experiencing this failure later when it possibly could possibly have graver consequences. But overall, what I learned from the 3 experiences, the girl, computer science, and football, was that your risk assessment is going to be to the best of your ability, and of course you're going to get blindsided by risks that you can't fully understand. But that comes with the process. That comes with life. Because if we understood every single risk assessment, if we understood that going to school today and that my grade was going to be a B, it's going to be a problem. Otherwise, what else are we here? What else are we here for? If we knew everything, if we understood every risk assessment, but doing your damn well best to understanding life and to understanding what you're getting yourself into is going to make you great. Thank you.